Jessica, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so CEO of the Mycelia Group, Jessica Feranti. I've been in cannabis for around 10 years, doing quite a bit of everything, frankly. Joined the industry not through, or by accident. I genuinely wanted to be in this space and be one of the early pioneers, at least in the legal industry, of course. After about a decade of helping, in the cannabis industry specifically, helping to scale different startups in media, technology, manufacturing, I launched the Mycelia Group last year to be able to help, a larger group of cannabis companies grow and scale versus just one at a time. And into quite a few different things, including throwing events in the industry for different C-suite executives, different, essentially, I call them networking experiences, to launching women's scholarships in the space and a whole host of things. So I would say a lot has evolved and changed over the last 10 years, but the one thing that's been consistent is my love for all things, cannabis and industry, industry-wise or industry related. So
perfect. Okay, so let's talk Mycelia Group a little bit more. So what I've noticed is that you described the Mycelia Group as a company's, let's say, primary care physician. Now, that's a really unusual way to position a consulting business. So what does that mean? And what are the symptoms that tell a founder, oh, it's time to call Jessica?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. So, any time you're working with anybody in any industry or discussing really any topic, the one thing that I've learned, especially in sales, is you want to be able to create something that's relatable, something that people understand, right? That clicks and is relatable enough that it is transferable from industry to industry or company to company. The reason that I'm using the primary care physician, language is because that's something that I think that everyone can relate to. How it is essentially described, right, under the Mycelia Group is we're your business's primary care physician. Let's say you have a certain symptom that you can't diagnose on your own, or you need checkups, right, just to stay healthy, or you know what you need and you're just going to the doctor to get some advice. You're going to your primary care, because primarily that PCP understands your whole health picture. You don't have to re-explain stuff, right? Your doctor's got it. They've got the information. And you know that if you need any general tests, anything like that, the doctor will perform it. But if you need something beyond that, right, you having an issue with a certain part of your body or anything like that, what happens there is you're trusting your PCP to then send you to, say, someone in network, like a specialist, right, a doctor, right, a stomach doctor, whatever. When those results come back, you're not just working with a specialist. That specialist doctor is now sending all those results back to who? Your PCP. Because again, they're the ones that are really connecting all the dots. So this is something that people, regardless, again, industry or otherwise, it's something that everyone, I think, can generally relate to. And so as a company that performs so many different types, of engagements and helps in so many different areas, it was the easiest to use that as a reference point, is we're your business primary care physician. You come to us if you're looking to stay healthy as you grow. You come to us if you're having symptoms and if you're not sure what those symptoms mean, or how to treat them, right? You're coming to us if you know what your needs are, but you still need the treatment plan, right? You still need that assistance. Or you're coming to us if you don't know what the issues are, if you are looking to solve a certain thing, but maybe don't know who to go to. We're like that first triage that then helps you determine what is the best treatment plan. Who should you work with? What does that look like? So it's about being relatable ultimately.
Got it. And it does really make sense, because when you think about it, obviously through that relatability, we reach a point where oh, I'm good at, diagnostics, and I can tell you where to go, as you said, where to go, what to do, who to contact, and what we can do. But ultimately, it's that like sort of diagnostics part that you can figure out at the very start, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's the trust that you build with your doctor, right? And it's the same thing. We're servicing so many different companies around the industry, and we obviously have a very strong network of our own. And again, I use the doctor example because of that psychology behind it. Because much like a doctor, we also have our whole, we have our in-house people, right, that are going to be experts in the space, that have their core competencies. But we feel that at the end of the day, when you need a specialist, we're not going to try to form fit someone that we have in-house and match them, to a client to solve that particular need. We're going to go just like a doctor and tap into our in-network specialists, right? Our go-to person for operational work, our go-to 6 vendors when it comes to marketing. And each of those 6 vendors might have a totally different subset of experience or expertise in let's say a certain state, or a certain type of company, and supporting them. So, I think ultimately it comes down to having a trusted network, and that's something that people take. For a lot of people, it takes years, decades, right, to build. We form that and have created that trusted network. So when people do come to us, it's not for one single purpose. They are coming to us knowing that they now have a partner in their company's health to help them grow, long term. And just like anything else, right? This industry is built on relationships. It's built on long-term, long-term strategic partnerships and relationships. So that's sort of our, that's our superpower in the space.
So let's do a little bit of an experiment, and I want you to teach me about how
Sure.
you do this. I'm interested. So let's say I'm
Nice.
CEO of a cannabis company, right? And my company is growing fast. Revenue's up. We're hiring people. Everything's great, but like every week, we go into feels a little bit harder than the last one. So I'm thinking I reach out to you, and I want you to walk me through what happens when someone like me calls you for the first time. How does that conversation go?
Yeah. That's a great question, Philip. Ultimately, again, going back to the doctor example, no one patient is the same. So I don't come into any single meeting having just like, here's my preset questions, here are my team, right? Here are the preset questions, here's how we're going to ask you and approach this, and we're going to have the same strategy or anything throughout. Ultimately, everything is built on a case-by-case basis. And so when I meet with a CEO or founder who's in a position that, to your description, Philip, sounds like they're growing, they're in a healthy state of scaling, but each week is getting harder. My main thing is, how can we solve, what are their issues and what is it that we can actually solve here? I would probably start with asking some questions of like, when you say that the week, every week is getting harder than the last, what does it look like? Does that mean that you're gaining more business, but operationally it's hard to sustain? Like things are breaking, your schedule's all over the place, you're having a hard time prioritizing what's more important, what isn't. Like the thing is, regardless if you're cannabis, if you're psychedelics, you're another industry, I often talk about it like building a foundation for a house. Again, relatability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of the type of house you're building, you still need a solid foundation. You still need like solid operations, right? And like infrastructure, the right systems, the right tools, the right, people, the right SOPs. Without that, every single time you scale in your business, there's another crack in that foundation. And now you're building upon something that at any point can just collapse underneath you, especially companies that are successful. Because they're more susceptible to, to like, what's the phrase? Crumbling under the weight of their own success, right? So that's the approach, as opposed to going in and making assumptions or asking the same subset of questions. It's like, let's first identify what is weighing you down the most, what is preventing you from bringing in a steady stream of revenue or servicing, right, that stream of revenue, and then where are the gaps that we can start to fill based on priority. Because I will say one more thing to that, Phil, which is that founders at most stages of growth, I think a lot of their issues are pretty common. And one of the main issues is that there's so much to focus on at once, they have a hard time prioritizing. So that's the one thing that I would say I would pretty much focus on, like, regardless of, what issue like you came to me with. What are those areas that you're focusing on now? And what we essentially would help identify which of those focus areas are going to have the biggest impact. So we'll put it in like a matrix and be like, this looks like it's important. This feels like it's a top, it's a level 5 priority. But when you look at the actual impact it's making to your business, we actually need to dumb that down to like a level 2 priority. And a lot of founders just aren't equipped, or while they're in the thick of it, they have a hard time, objectively, like, looking at their own business from like a third party view.
I'm going to ask you for an example later, because I want to hear a little bit about that in more specifics. But I do have one other thing that I wanted to, now that you're talking about this sort of aspect of you come to me and I ask you questions, we figure out what's actually happening, and relatability and the trust and all that. So I'm interested in, like, when we're talking about most consultants and in how they approach is like, with a PowerPoint and a list of recommendations and stuff like that. And then you talk about building companies, as you said, like, we need to make sure that we have a good foundation, no cracks. We have to have a good structure, a good skeleton. So what's different about the way you actually work with founders? How does that portion look like?
Oh man, it's a very, very important thing that you mentioned, because there is an important distinction between consultancies that are providing primarily strategy or execution, or obviously both. I found there are a lot of companies out there that are really well equipped in building strategy or execution, but they obviously suffer in one area or the other. I think that for us and where we tend to focus more is the type. We would like to bring in more, that's a better way to put it. We look to attract companies that are more in the realm of needing support and being open-minded to support on both ends, both strategy and execution. Because listen, a presentation is great. Like, I can tell you right now, Philip, hey, you have this and this issue, and here's the general plan of like how to move forward with it. The challenge is if you're a founder or you're in a leadership team and you're working on 80 other projects, think of how hard it would be for you and your team to now take a plan on paper and actually bring that into action, into reality. Like, ultimately, strategy is great, but if you don't have the team, the mindset, or like the experience ultimately to bring that to life, it just dies on paper. It's like, what does it matter at that point? So one of the areas that we focus on is, even like when it comes to fractional executives, a lot of companies in the space suffer from not having the right expertise on staff because they can't afford it. If we're plugging in a fractional executive who's going to come in and do, say, like the strategy, portion of it, how does the business owner who's bringing them in know how to properly vet that executive, how to properly vet their work that executive is completing, or vet the strategy? And oftentimes, like, they can't. They don't have that like background. Where the Mycelia group comes in as like really like a major player in that type of structure is that when we're placing a fractional executive, we're not just putting them in there and saying like, cool, they'll build a strategy for you, good luck. We're actually overseeing the entirety of the project. So like, think of it again, the doctor sense. We're doing it from diagnosis all the way through to the execution of the treatment plan. And the specialists and the people we're bringing in throughout that process are all there to fulfill like the overall holistic game plan for that business, not just tackle one issue or one strategy. Everything has to be congruent, like working towards the total, the end goal, the end result. So that's really the biggest difference, Philip, is we're not just plugging people in or providing just strategy. We are there throughout the entire process, diagnostic, all the way through to execution, and then we're overseeing the people doing the work to ensure that it's being done correctly.
So it's a full package pretty much. And it, as you said, like, it's not, we're going to be doing this, full stop, period. It ends here, goodbye. It's like, let me hold your hand and let me drive you through this entire thing so that later on, obviously, you would be able to also make sure that you're following that process, even if I'm not here, so we don't mess stuff up, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Perfect. Now, going back to the conversation, so without naming names, obviously, so can you tell me a little bit about a company that, let's say, came to you convinced that they might have one problem, but once you got inside the business and you checked everything, you looked everything from all the perspectives, you were like, okay, this is something else completely different happening here. Did you have examples like those?
Yeah, it happens pretty often, actually. Yeah, I can give you two examples right off the bat, even from like when we first launched a few different companies that we've seen these type of situations. And so one was a company that approached us for some sort of sales support, to come in, like review the revenue operations. They were like, hey, we need to have someone come in, review our sales team, maybe let some people go, make some new hires, and kind of build the strategy out to be a little more effective. And shortly after coming in, which is why we do the diagnostic phase always, shortly after coming in, we found, a portion of that was absolutely correct. Like they needed some revamping in the sales team. Their strategy definitely needed to be updated, to reflect the markets that they were operating in. But the issues that they saw as their sales reps not performing were far deeper than just that. So like, for instance, their sales team was selling, but their team was not manufacturing and producing the products fast enough, which was then affecting their sales and longevity, right, and the retention of their clients. Their customer service department had a pretty significant disconnect from the sales team, and marketing was speaking a totally different language and promoting those services very differently than how the sales team was presenting them. So it's like, yeah, we could come in and just tackle the sales side of things, but this is why just a moment ago I was describing the importance of coming in and not just trying to plug one hole and looking at it so narrowly. If you're growing or scaling a business, it's not as simple as just one element. It's like a body. That's why I use the doctor example. Something might be wrong with your heart, and that might be an issue with your heart, but there are 4 other things that are being affected by that in some capacity, whether it's your diet, and your exercise, there's something wrong with another organ. A business, just like a body, there's a lot of different moving parts. So yeah, shortly after coming in, instead of looking narrowly at one area, we looked at the big picture and all the different elements and found it was a comprehensive, structural issue. And once we were able to identify that, boom, business is growing and thriving because it identified. It's like if you're a founder, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And that's where we plug in. The other instance was we were helping to launch a dispensary. That dispensary thought that their main challenge was more or less just like getting some assistance like on like the marketing side. And then again, for a company that's coming into the space brand new, thinks they kind of, more or less have most things down. You find quickly, same situation, they don't know what they don't know. And so we came in to assist on the marketing side and ended up finding that they were not prepared for their launch in areas of compliance, of wholesale agreements and contracts. Their loyalty program did not exist. Their systems and their softwares were kind of blindly selected. And that's even one minute area. A business owner, let's say like a dispensary owner, can come bring in or select a point of sale system and be like, cool, I'm good to implement it. And I'm going to have that point of sale system help us. That point of sale system is only going to help to a certain point. They'll help you get set up in the system, get some users in there, help you navigate a little bit. But when it comes to integrating that deeply within the rest of your business, you don't know until you know that a month in, you have to do all that by yourself. The POS system isn't going to help you. So these are just some of the many examples we've seen where they think it's one symptom, one area, and it's a body-wide issue.
And as you're talking about that, and this is what makes me most interested about all of this we're talking about right now, is the fact that you also mentioned to me earlier that as the mycelium fungi functions, it's like, oh, within this ecosystem, I see that one tree is underfed. Let's, we jump in and we figure out what's happening. And all of these metaphors, again, comparing it to with the metaphor of like an entire body, all of this is. Can you just repeat what you told me at the very start of this conversation? Because I really think this is a very good comparison to how you function with founders and with companies as the fungi does in a natural ecosystem as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Philip. So essentially, a lot of people ask this question, right? Like, why mycelia? You're so obsessed with mushrooms. Like, what's the connection there? And yes, while we work in the cannabis and psychedelics, markets primarily, although we do business in a lot of other sectors too, the reason that comes into play is actually like well beyond the industries that we serve. So mycelia is a play on mycelium, which are the fungi roots that are built. They're called like the World Wide Web of nature. So most people don't realize it or recognize it, but pretty much no matter where you're walking, as long as it's like on grass or somewhere in nature, you're walking on top of what is miles and miles of mycelium, these roots that are connected to everything in the ecosystem. And so mycelium, what it does is it controls the environment. It helps. Here's like a good example. I'll give you this specific one we discussed earlier. So mycelium can connect, let's say, multiple trees, right? So it's a network underground connecting, all different organisms in the space. When one tree, say, is lacking in nutrients, the mycelium acts as like that World Wide Web, right? That connecting framework to notify other trees and other organisms in the area that this tree is lacking in nutrients. And so it sends out these signals, and then other trees can actually send nutrients through that network, through that organic network, to the other tree to save it. And so I liken that to what we do in the space too, because number one, we are the underlying ecosystem, right? That maybe the invisible ecosystem underground that's powering a lot of the cannabis companies and other businesses in this industry, just more or less silently, helping to put things in their place and help them grow and scale sustainably. The other element to that is one of the biggest challenges we've seen and heard feedback from a lot of other companies in the space around consultants is that they'll hire someone in marketing, let's say a fractional CMO, and they'll hire someone fractionally for sales, and they'll bring in 3 more consultants for 3 different areas of the business. The main challenge that they face is that because those fractional executives or the talent they're bringing in, their like core competencies, say, is just sales or just marketing, they're not communicating. So they're creating silos. So like marketing isn't talking to sales. I'm like, they're not worried about it. Like their whole job is just to worry about marketing. Same about sales, same about operations. Because we're that fundamental ecosystem, like that infrastructure, we're the one connecting all of those consultants. We're the one connecting your in-house, say, operations team to the marketing agency you just brought in, to support them, or ensuring that your inventory team, is working closely with, say, your customer service team. Like, we're ensuring that the overall picture of your health is where it needs to be. And that was the whole, kind of concept behind using mycelium, and the fungi kingdom. It's the hidden network controlling the world, and nobody talks about it.
Let's say if someone listening today is wondering whether they're actually ready to scale, or whether they're just scaling chaos, or whatever is going on in their company. So what are the 3 biggest warning signs they should be paying attention to?
Oh, that's a great question, because honestly, depending on their business, there could be a host of things, right? I think one of the and I would say easiest, I'll say not everyone might agree with me on this, but I think one of the easiest things off the bat is culture. Because if the people that you have within your team, and you could recognize the signs if you lead with emotional intelligence, if you're paying attention to your crew, right? If you see your team is burning out, not completing things on time, coming up with a lot of or presenting to the table, right? Like bringing to the table a lot of challenges they're facing. Like if there is some internal friction that starts to become really visible, I think that's like one of the easiest ways to note that, hey, something is wrong. Because it doesn't necessarily mean it's a fundamental issue in the team culture, right? Like the company culture. It could just be an issue of they're burning out because your team is lacking automation. Or again, they're struggling because maybe they're not getting paid enough because your revenue doesn't support that. So I think like one of the easiest things I'd say top line is like your team, listening to your team and recognizing like where they are and hearing them because they are the ones with boots on the ground. The second I would say would be revenue. If you are building up your revenue, that's an area where, you should leverage some sort of support and some resources in the space to continue that and to continue to grow it. But from an issue standpoint, if your revenue is plateauing, if you're seeking to scale rapidly and you're growing and things are good, but you don't know if your team could sustain like that increase in revenue. So that would be another area. And the third would be operations. Because really, again, much like we talked about, like the house example, the foundation, like operations is the lifeblood of the company. It's how everyone in the company is performing their tasks, how they're staying on top of projects, different things like that.
Where can people find you? Where can people find Mycelia Group? What's the best way of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So you could find us at myceliagroup.com. So that's MYCELIA group.com. We're across all socials at the Mycelia Group. So really nice and easy to find us. And of course, we're going to be at quite a few different shows all over the country. So you can find us at Ignite It, Hall of Flowers, Revelry, MJ BizCon, you name it. So yeah, we're excited to see what the rest of the year brings.
As the mycelium, you're everywhere. So that's good.
Exactly.
Wonderful conversation, Jessica. Really, once again, amazing stuff. A lot of things that I've learned that I did not know before. So thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.